So really,
Again, don't trouble yourself too much with this because the design here is going to change a little bit. Go ahead, Charles.
well, I was just going to say. So yeah, so at this point, we're really just setting up the world, setting up the environment to before we even get to the interaction part.
Yeah, so we're with this. Yeah, I know I'm really trying to cruise along here, and we're almost out of time. I'm not doing a good job, so. But we've gotten through the important part. The only other bit here is that I have another module called inputs. It's let me find it. It's called scripts.inputs. It's in the scripts folder, and its only job is to create the buttons that you see on the screen, so the left and right and the up. And a change that I made this week, people should go in and definitely take a look at this, is if you're running this on OS 10 in the simulator, or if you're running it on Windows, and you've selected one of the Android skins, like I do, then the Android skins on Windows detect keyboard inputs, and in OS 10 it doesn't matter which one you run, they all detect keyboard inputs. But when I do my designs, you'll notice here that the left and right buttons are on the left side of the screen, and the jump is over here on the right. And so if I want to jump and then like try to move in the air, I got to click and then I got to move my mouse all the way over here, and it's lousy for testing. It gives me headaches. So what I've done is if you go look at scripts.inputs, at the end of the file you'll see I created a bunch of key listeners, and then I did a trick. I did some tricky coding. It's all explained in the file. And basically what I did was I attached the keyboard inputs. So let me just move my mouse. I'm not even clicking on the screen now. I'm clicking on my keyboard. You can probably hear the tapping in the background. And when I do that, I've assigned certain keys on my keyboard to trigger the same listener that is used for these buttons, and it even does all the highlighting and all that stuff. So now I can easily test air control, which is a feature that we put in for this week, where you can, when you jump and then you can move. Let me get a good jump here. Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple of questions.
Sure, shoot.
One, just a curiosity. Do you have any idea what the rationale is for iOS skins not dispatching key events?
Windows?
In Windows, yeah. I never
I asked
understood
them
why.
about that, and the answer was because iOS emulated devices do not support keyboards, so we're not going to put it in the simulator.
Okay, it just seemed strange. It
Actually,
seemed like an
yeah, but
extra.
it
It
works
seemed like
on
an extra step in the sense that if the skin is purely cosmetic, it just struck me as strange. But yeah, that's a
Yeah,
question.
I don't want to pound on them too much.
No,
Here's the
I mean,
thing is the people who are listening, they're going, well, that's not a good reason. I kind of agree with you, but they got their plates full. So what I've done
yeah.
personally is sometimes I find that I need to do a demo video, and I'd really like to have those keyboard shortcuts, but I want to have an iPad when I'm doing the video.
Yep.
So if you go out in your Corona folder, this is completely separate from the design here, but you go out in your Corona folder, you're going to find, I can't remember the name of it, like a resources folder or something. So this is where Corona lives. You're a Windows user, find the Corona executable. There's a subfolder of that, and you're going to find a bunch of these files that define all of these skins. So what you want to do is go copy one of the Android ones and make a copy of it, and you may need to copy it to your desktop to edit it and rename the file. Basically, take one of the Android ones and then look at the iPad definition and take all the settings out of the iPad except keep the bit where it says this is an Android device. So what I've done is I've made an Android iPad, gave it the resolution I needed, but I tricked the simulator and said this is really an Android device. In other words, let me have access to the key events.
Yeah.
And then I can record my videos for demos on the forums or doing game releases, but be able to create keyboard shortcuts so I can kind of cheat, because you obviously, unless you've got the Windows machine with a touch screen, unless you've got that, you don't have any ability to actually touch the simulator when you're doing it. It's very painful sometimes to show how a game works.
And this is my second question was just wondering what your method for faking the keyboard. Do you dispatch touch events, or do you just call the function that is mapped to those events?
I do a number of different things. First of all, SSK comes with if you have SSK in your, it automatically sets up listeners and dispatches. I'm sorry. SSK, if in your project, will automatically dispatch key events, but what I've done is I've cleaned up the key events so that if you're on OS 10 or Windows, you get the same events. Because there's slight differences between some of the events on the keyboard for Windows and OS 10. Some of the arrow keys and stuff have slightly different spellings or something, I can't remember, but I cleaned them up so they're uniform. That said, sometimes I explicitly set up key listeners on objects if I want to make it. Depends on my coding style. This time around, what I did was these the buttons. Let me show you one. The buttons have a touch listener called on touch. So right button, left button, etc. And let me find on touch for you. So on touch is this great big listener that I wrote that looks at the phase, it grabs the focus, changes the color of the arrow indicator that's on the button and all that. So it's a lot of heavy lifting. I wrote it one time, and I use it for each of the different buttons.
Yeah.
And then that itself will dispatch another event when the button is touched and throws it out into the ether, so to speak. It creates a runtime event, so called on left for the left button, on right for the right button, and on jump. So going to your question, I did all that, and then I was trying to do this air control thing for today's demo, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sick of clicking this and clicking over here to try to see is air control working and whatever. So I just hooked up key events, and the way I did that was at the bottom of this file, I created, and I could have called it anything. This may be a little confusing to some folks, but I created a function called onLeft. I could have called it onLeft keyboard. Let's say it like onLeft key. And basically this is a listener that says, it's a listener listening for the key event, which is the, there's a generic event in Corona for keyboards and other touch devices, and it's just called key. And so anything with a key, like your joystick's got buttons on it, those trigger the key event. Hand controllers for like the Fire TV also trigger key events. The keyboard triggers key events. So it's a generic catcher for anything with keys.
Yep.
So among the things that get passed in here is a thing called event. It takes an event just like all other listeners, and descriptor. And the descriptor, now there's two ways to do this. There's a key code, and I don't remember the name of it, but it's got a numeric value that's consistent across Android and iOS and stuff like that. But then there's also descriptors. Now I personally like to use the descriptors. So this is where the SSK business cleans them up so they're consistent. But I like to know, oh, they press the A key, because like WASD, W-A-S-D, I'm one of those old school users for A is left, D is right, W
is that old school? Do they not do that anymore?
I don't know. You know, okay. Versus using, I see some people that use the arrow keys. I'm like, what planet are you from, man? The arrow keys, those are for the extra keys you need to do, but WASD is primary navigation. Anyways, I handle both for this. So I you get an event, I look at the descriptor, and I say if it's an A or left, continue on. If it's not A or left, we're out of here. This is the wrong listener, don't do it.